So Samia, Nelson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nika and Lynn. Hello, everyone. It's so great to see you all today. My name is Samia, and I am the communications manager at Scouting in Europe. So that's World Scout Bureau European Support Center, and I'm based in Brussels. And today I'm joined by my lovely colleague all the way from Nairobi, Nelson.
Hi, everyone. Greetings from sunny Nairobi. My name is Nelson, and I'm the Communications and Partnerships Manager for the Africa Support Center in Nairobi.
Amazing. So I am trying to share my screen. Bear with me. I hope everyone can see my screen. Yes?
Yeah, it's all good.
Perfect. So for the next 40 to 45 minutes, we will be walking you through the process of storytelling and how do we connect that with the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. We really would like to keep the session as short as possible, and we would like to talk as little as possible as well. So for the next 15 minutes, we'll be running some slides, me and Nelson. And then please, in the meantime, feel free to drop any questions you might have or any additions in the chat box, and we'll make sure to look at them later. And also toward the end, we will be allocating around 25 minutes for you actually to practice and to test out some of those tools that we'll be providing you with. So yeah, let's get started. First of all, it's very important when we speak about storytelling to understand what actually constitutes a story. So what are the elements that form a good story? And whenever we speak about storytelling, we have to account for three main elements, which are audiences, content, and channels. So audiences, before starting to actually think about your story, you have to think about your target audience, to whom the story is being addressed. Are we thinking about our own Scout community in the local district? Are we thinking about young people in general who might not even be Scouts or familiar with the Scout movement? Are we addressing our message to potential investors, donors, current donors, the government, a media house, if we are producing a press release? So it's very, very important to think about the audience, the final target audience, that will guide basically the content that we'll be producing. And that takes me to the second element, which is the content type. So it's very important to think about what shape or form your final content will actually take. Is it going to be a fun blog post, for example, or a web story? Is it going to be an audiovisual production, a video, or a series of photos? Is it a campaign that will be followed by a call to action? So it's very important to think as well about the final product. That will also guide you into preparing for the different resources that you might need, whether writing or audiovisual resources. And finally, we have to think about, of course, our distribution channels. So in World Scouting, we have scout.org. That's our main sort of platform through which we connect to the outside world. But we also have different social media platforms through which we can publish our stories. So think about what platforms do you have for the moment, and through which channels your story will actually go. In terms of tone of voice, in World Scouting, and in Scouting in general, we would like to basically reflect the image of what Scouting is. And that should go through a tone that is very friendly, that is very youthful, that is not corporate at all. So there is nothing worse than a boring story with a reporting tone. So it's very important to keep in mind that tone while thinking about your stories. And of course, this workshop is about how do we connect the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, with storytelling. And thankfully, we have a framework for that is called Scouts for SDGs, and that Nelson will walk us through very quickly. I will move to the second slide.
Yes, so when we talk about connecting our stories to the SDGs, we all know that we have the Scouts for SDGs framework. And basically what this does is that it gives us an opportunity as a movement to showcase the contributions that we are making towards the achievement of the SDGs, both at a regional level, at a global level, and also most importantly at the local community level. So the SDGs are for the entire world, but then as Scouts, the question is, what are we contributing to, and how do we better document and disseminate the stories about the impact that we are contributing as a movement? Remember that over 54 million of us are spread around the world. And this is a very big group of young people whose contributions to the SDGs needs to be is very vital, and we need as a movement to find a way to document that and share with the world. As Samia said, thankfully we have the Scouts for SDGs mobilization, and you can go to sdgs.scout.org to learn more about that and get some further tips into how you can align that. But just a few examples into what, or rather, how can you connect your stories to the SDGs? And we have a couple of examples here in terms of the different angles that your story can find a connection to the SDGs. Number one is that there are lots of projects, community level projects being implemented by Scouts in your NSO. So how we need to find a way of telling the stories of those projects, and particularly to what SDGs they are making a contributions to. From a partnership point of view, you have strategic engagements with your partners at the national or local level, and these play a contribution to supporting your NSO in certain activities that help to contribute to the SDGs. So we can also take our storytelling from that partnership perspective. You're running campaigns. For example, Lynn just mentioned about the Volunteer Day that's coming up on the 5th of December. So how can we link our role as a volunteer movement and the contributions that we make towards the achievement of sustainable development goals? Throughout this year, we've had a lot of volunteer engagements towards supporting COVID-19, which has a direct relations to our contributions to achieving the SDGs. Advocacy, we have currently we have about 9 key topics that the movement has selected to advocate upon, but it doesn't tie you to that. There are lots of issues at a community level. So whatever advocacy efforts you're creating can be a contributions towards the SDGs. Data and case studies, helping to collect that and contribute to the bigger chunk of what our overall contribution as a movement to the SDGs becomes. I think those are just a few angles that you can take. And while you're talking about the channels, when you're sharing out these stories, Samia mentioned that we have this the scouts.org platform, which gives you an opportunity to tag your story to a particular SDGs. But also as a takeaway from your NSO level, you could also, within your websites, you could build a system of capturing the contributions of your scouts so that at the end of the year, for example, like we are coming to the end of the year, you can take stock and say that in this particular year, this is what we have made. This is the contribution we've made as an NSO. Over to you, Samia.
Definitely. So just to sum this up, basically, we have to really be focused on our ultimate goal eventually in terms of external communication and scouting. What we would like to show at the end of the day is the great and positive impact that scouting has on communities and on young people and on the development basically of young people. So it's very important to keep that in mind. And the SDGs are definitely a framework that would play into the fulfillment of this ultimate goal of our external communication. Moving on now, and I really wanted to show you this interesting cycle because we are all communication people somehow, whether we are full-time employees in our NSOs or volunteers, we know that we are here because we do believe in the power of communication. And myself, sometimes I struggle with my colleagues working in programs who are too focused on their training courses and delivering a great event, etc. But they do not necessarily pay a lot of attention to the importance of actually giving exposure and visibility to the work they do. So I usually tell them, it's great what you're doing. It is worth telling the world about it as well. It's worth giving it more visibility because visibility will bring credibility to your work. And by extension, it will bring more credibility to the movement. And credibility means more recognition from people around us and from institutions and especially from donors. And that means more money. With more money, you can do more projects. And with more projects, you can actually tell more stories and the cycle goes on and on. So it's very important to actually use this narrative or this sort of rationale to actually convince the people around you that they should communicate a bit more about their stories. And you have, of course, the tools and the expertise to format the story and make it newsworthy, etc. So please keep reminding people around you that they need to basically communicate about the work they do, and that will definitely bring more good results to the movement in general. Nelson, I will walk you very quickly through the process of how to write a story. These are like really sort of 1 to 10 steps, but it's very important to probably have, like, everyone on the same page when it comes to the technical process of writing a story. So it's yours.
Yes, indeed, Samia. So we have here a step-by-step process that you can consider when you're putting together to write a story for Scout.org, but this should not limit you to whatever you're going to publish on Scout.org only, but it's just a guide that you can use for your own internal or rather NSO publications as well. So top of the list is, first of all, you need to really narrow down to what exactly are you writing about. What's your topic? What's your issue? So you need to be very clear about that. And the more specific that is, the more opportunity it gives you to provide people with greater insights, give more details, and make your story a little bit more focused. And then while you do that, focus on what's the most interesting thing in your story. Okay, what's that unique aspect of the story you're telling that the writer probably has not heard about? So because remember here, you're engaging the reader's mind, and you need to be creative in a way that makes them feel that they actually reading something new and something that will be interesting to them. And then you always need to start your story with what we call a hook. So exactly what's the main point of your story? Okay, so by just reading the first sentence or the first paragraphs, can somebody be able to understand what you're talking about? And then as you go on in your story, you'll be providing more flesh that qualifies, your main point at the beginning that you put up at the beginning of the story. It's very important to stress that out right from the beginning. And then, just as a writing rule, keep short paragraphs. Don't write too long sentences, because that again opens up an opportunity for you to go into sometimes information that may not really be very, very targeted and important to your story. So it waters it down, so to speak. And then, of course, your title. By just reading your title, somebody should get interested in wanting to read the rest of your story. So go for a catchy title. And then as much as possible, avoid abbreviations, because remember that not all your audiences are aware of what it means, or rather what our internal jargons or abbreviations in the movement refer to. So as much as possible, try to write out in full whatever abbreviations that you use in your story. That way, it makes the reader feel like they are part of the picture. Because if somebody reads something and feels like, oh, I don't understand this, then you're probably losing them out. And then, of course, always it's good to seek a fresh pair of eyes to just look at your story, somebody to read through your work, because in the process, they can help you identify some errors, or they can help you rephrase. Yes. Here at this point, short guide on how to share your stories and some best practices that Samia is going to be dropping on the link. This guide is basically to assist you, give you some insights into further understanding this process, but also it's a guide. So feel free to tweak it to suit your own writing style as well.
Yes, definitely. We will be sharing that soon, probably when they go to the breakout rooms. Also, we will be sharing this presentation anyway as a follow-up to this webinar today, and we will also make sure to attach the guide as well. Moving on here, I mean, this is like really a summary of basically what makes story impactful. So the key word here is definitely impact. It's very important to set the context. It's very important to keep the focus. We are a youth-led movement, so we really need to always shed light on the amazing actions that youth are doing. It's very important to showcase the impact. That could be through figures or data. That could be through quotes as well, coming from people who have benefited from our service. And of course, it's very, very important to have powerful images. And we'll talk a bit more about images in a short while. Here are a couple of the good practices that we have picked with Nelson. Nelson will speak a bit about the Niger story here, just to give you a few snippets of why actually we think that these two stories are quite impactful. Here you go, Nelson.
Thank you, Samia. So the story about Scouts leading youth action against COVID-19 in Niger, it's a story that I wrote in, I think, a couple of months ago, and it's COVID related. And there's a link there. If you want to go read the story on scout.org, there's a link below there. But for me, what really stands out here is a couple of things. Number one is that it's the relevance of the story. So it's about Scouts taking action on an issue that's of not just global importance, but also affecting them directly at their community level. So that's number one, the relevance and the context. Number two is through their actions on COVID-19, the NSOs contributed greatly towards achievement of certain SDGs. For instance, we know COVID-19 is a health emergency issue, and by the NSO contributing to addressing that, they have made a contribution, not just as a National Scout organization, but to the wider nation, because this was the NSO leading other young people, other youth organizations on government supported initiatives to tackling COVID-19. And above all, the other thing that I feel makes this story a good case is the fact that they never did it alone. They collaborated with other partners, they collaborated with other organizations, they collaborated with community members. We talk about impact being at the local level. So if your actions are directly affecting the community, then I think for me that really is a big positive. So maybe Samia, you'd like to talk about what the Scouts, yes, the Scouts of Finland.
So I have picked the story that was published recently, at the end of October, and it's about a yearly program actually that the Finnish Scouts run with the primary schools. They go into schools once a year, and they spend basically they run a program for a whole week with the pupils, and then they take them also at the end of that week. They take them on a trip to the forest where actually kids can experience a bit the magic of scouting, and this is an amazing strategy actually of recruitment, because most of those kids would like to continue that, and they ask how can I join scouting, etc. So the story was really inspiring, and I wanted to write like a short article about it. For me, what stands out here first, the headline. It's definitely catchy because we are mentioning thousands here, and actually there are thousands when you go into the story. So even if you don't have a specific figure, it's okay to give an estimation. Are we talking about hundreds or thousands, etc.? That definitely gives an indication to the reader about the scope or the scope of impact of that action. And also, the second thing is, of course, this is quite tightly related to the SDGs. It's about quality education, but it's also about partnerships for the goals. So this is an amazing example of how formal education and non-formal education can both come together to create change and inspire generations. And of course, it has to do a lot with the environment and how can we actually make sure that these young generations are connecting as much as possible with nature and caring about the environment. So in a nutshell, basically, the story definitely taps into different elements, and especially a lot of SDGs. And to top it all, for me, the picture that I chose is definitely good, because it's full of spark. It shows really the magic of the scouting outdoor experience. And I think it's very important, definitely, to think about images that would go with your stories when you are producing a story. And that's why we wanted to talk very quickly before moving to the breakout rooms about the power of images. Please make sure to think through the image that you select that would be the best addition or that would complement your story. It's very important to show always scouts in action, scouts who are moving, doing something, youthful faces. Why not close-ups if you can actually have portraits of scouts? Usually these attract a lot of attention from the audience. Make sure that we are also showing a diverse number of scouts, because we are such a big movement full of diversity, and we do actually claim to be inclusive. So it's very important to showcase that as well on our visual identity. And of course, I mean, if you are the one taking photos, or if you have a photographer, a volunteer or professional in your team, make sure that they try to experiment with different angles, because we never know. Sometimes we need several angles of the same photo. So that brings us actually to the end of this talking section. We don't want to talk more than this. We think that it's very important that you also get to get your hands a bit dirty and practice a little bit. And that's why we picked a scenario today for you to experiment with. We'll be splitting you into 3 random groups. So you'll be working with other people, hopefully from other regions, on the same scenario. The scenario says a local group in your country has been awarded a Citizens Award for the Great Community Project as part of COVID-19 response. You would like to showcase their action and cover their award-winning story for International Volunteers Day coming up next Saturday, the 5th. So this is really timely. And we would like the first group, so if you find yourself in the first group, we would like you to reflect and lay out the story production process. So basically you have this is the story. You have to tell us. Could be actually just a checklist of 1, 2, 3, 4. There is no need to go into details. Just tell us what would be the steps that you would actually follow to produce the story. That would go with facts gathering. How are you going to collect the data? Interviews booking, if you need to book someone for an interview. Who exactly from the story, from the case study that we have shown to you, we have shared with you. It could be also, you have to tell us the angle. So from which angle are you going to tackle your story as well? And why not the outline? So it could be the first paragraph, we would like to talk about this, second, third, this is the main message, etc. So make sure that you give us those key highlights while you lay out the process of this story production. So that's group 1. So if you find yourself in group 1, you are going to do that. Group 2, you have to think about a headline, a catchy headline for the story, and also write down the first lead paragraph. So that's what Nelson referred to earlier as the hook. So basically, it's the first few lines to open up your story. So you'll have 15 minutes to think about that. The third group, we would like you to go beyond the written version or written format of a story, of the storytelling process, and we would like you to brainstorm ideas for what audiovisual or multimedia resources you would need to make your story, to basically take your story to the next level. So make it a bit more vibrant and add more audiovisual materials into it. So we'd like you to think about if for example you would like to do a video, what would this video be about? So more of like visual scripting, so things like that. Take a moment to think about that as well in your group. And I think Lean will be sharing with you now a link to the Padlet, which is basically a workspace. So we'll be all going there after splitting you into groups. And please write down all of these answers there. We'll come back in 15 minutes time to share. We'll give you 2 minutes per group. So make sure that you also identify someone to share in plenary. And then, we'll call it a workshop. So here you go. If you have any questions, make sure to write them down in the chat box and we'll address them. Okay. All right. We hope that you enjoyed the exercise. And I think it must be really interesting to also get the views of other regions. I think this is one of the rare spaces where we get together with other people from other regions sharing the same interest. So let's start with the team that actually typed down the headline and lead. The headline and lead team, group number 2, I guess. Who would like to share?
Abdul and I are going to share together.
Amazing.
Is Abdul back? Yes.
Okay.
Trying to
Yeah,
find you.
I'm back.
I think it was for the headlines team, right?
Right. Okay.
Abdul, do you want to start?
I'll
Okay.
share also the screen.
So we're starting with headlines, right? Samia?
Yep.
Yes. Headline lead team.
Yeah,
Can you share with us?
Right. All right. Basically, we did discuss how to do headlines. The first thing we have to do the catchy headlines, something like what we wrote at the Padlet just now is young scouts create 5,000 face shield from the frontliners. Second thing we do also highlight that the headline should be the key messages. Then the thing is the headline should have the story impact and the powerful statement, and something which the people outsiders can understand what we want to say in the story. Okay. Okay, Leja, can you you want to add on?
I think we wanted to keep it catchy and something that people from outside Scouts would understand. We didn't think the award itself was a story. It was why they got the award and how to make that the headline. And then we talked a little around needing to include the 5 W's of communications, the why, who, what, why, when, how type thing, as part of that intro paragraph below that. So people got a sense very quickly about what this story was really about, but we didn't have time to come up with the words for the paragraph, just the headline.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you so much, CJ. Thank you, Headline Lead Group. I think that's these are really interesting insights as well. And I particularly liked how you chose the angle not to focus on the award-winning aspect, but more about why, actually, what made them or what qualified them to win the award. So that's actually an interesting insight as well. All right, since time is tight, let's move on directly to the story production team.
Actually,
Yeah, I
Samia's
just
two groups worked on the same piece.
yeah. So I guess we were maybe
Annika, okay.
supposed to be story production, but we understood that we're also headline and lead. So
Sorry.
our group also worked on that.
Okay, well, more insights, the merrier. So yeah, go ahead. You can share with us your what you discussed.
Yeah, we were also short on time, but we did come up with a headline in the end. It maybe got a bit wordy, but what we got in the end was that Malacca province recognizes local scout heroes with the greatest award of the world for their impactful service to the community. So we did emphasize on getting an award, yeah, but also didn't have the time to come up with a further explanation in the headline.
That's all right. And sorry for the confusion. Maybe we should have been a bit more clear about the numbers of groups, etc. But it's fine. Does anyone want to share with us, I mean, maybe an experience about how they usually go about writing a story or producing a story? Just like, a few steps, like what do you do to gather your data or facts, to book your interviewees, to actually, outline the main elements of the story, etc. Does anyone want to share with us? Anyone?
And like CJ and Simon, for sure, you'll have something to add to that. You have so many stories coming out of your NSO.
Simon, I've spoken too much already.
Yes, exactly. I want to hear your voice, Simon.
Take yourself off mute.
I'm trying to work on a story as we speak with a daily. I don't really know. For me, all of this is around working out why we're trying to do it, and that transcends all of these 3 bits. And once you know why you're trying to do it, your headline, your story production, and your media content, they naturally fall into place. Once you work out the purpose, then the rest of it actually becomes very easy.
Yeah. Great. But can you give us a very quick example, Simon? Say there is like something really important happening in a week or two, and then you would like to create some media attention, or actually, I'm not sure about how you also go about sourcing stories for your own website as the UK Scouts. So what would be in a nutshell, like, you know, like 3 or 4 steps that you have to, you know, follow in order to produce a story? So just to make it also as relatable as possible to the rest of the group.
So it's about making it surprising and interesting. So in English, you would say counterintuitive. So unexpected. Is it, you wouldn't really expect Scouts to be doing that, and that gets the interest. That's the first thing. So make it surprising, put some data behind it, i.e. facts, you know, 3,000 people think that, or 200 people think this. Add in some celebrity sparkle if you've got some celebrities, depending on your channel. So, some newspapers like celebrities, some want it straight. So do that. And then choose 1 or 2 pictures that demonstrate diversity to go with it. And you asked how we go about sourcing stories for the website. Very easily, really. We write and generate content for external use first, and then we use that for our internal channels. Because truthfully, writing stuff internally, it's not a waste of time, but Scouts know how good Scouts is. Yeah. We want to convince people who aren't Scouts. So focus stuff on external channels first, and then you own your own channel so you can generate your own content.
Right. That's a great advice. And I heard also once that we shouldn't be preaching to the converter, because Scouts already believe in the power of Scouting. So exactly. That's great advice. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to speed up a bit now, and I would like to ask the final group with the multimedia sourcing to walk us for the next minute through the conversation. What did you talk about, guys? Who can report back? Multimedia team, number 3, I guess. Any volunteer?
I think Canada had some good views on this.
Thanks,
Who is
Simon.
That?
It's Jennifer.
Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer. Good to see
Go,
you.
Jennifer.
It's my first time in the meeting, so okay. Well, I think for us, when we do, you know, storytelling, as Simon said, you know, you look at all these components, and then usually what I would like to do is ensure that we can slice it up so that we can use different media. So for example, if you're doing a blog and you have pictures, and maybe you can do a slideshow, ensure that, you know, you can do a Instagram story, a Snapchat story, Facebook story. If you have video, which is great. And we were just talking about, you know, the challenge of video during the pandemic. So one of the challenges that we've had is that when we've had user-generated content or videos, it hasn't always been the best quality. So I was picking Simon's brain on that, on how to ensure you get, you know, really good user-generated content. And, you know, how do you then create maybe an infographic to make things more interesting? How do you, you know, if a story doesn't lend itself to video, how do you get sound? So it's really a question of ensuring that, you know, with each story, you don't just think of, you know, just writing a blog post, which is great, but also how you can generate other pieces of content so that you can extend the life of your story. So that's a little bit of what we talked about. So really, but it's important to think of the sort of, you know, channels that you're going to be using, and then looking at how you craft the story based on that channel. So Snapchat is very different than Instagram, and you know, very different than what you would have a media story on the news, for example. So you really have to craft the story based that way. What's been very successful for us is very youth-led in Canada. So, you know, we make the youth the focus of the story. We do find that the media tends to respond very well to that because, you know, they want to speak to youth. They don't want to speak to, you know, corporate people at Scouts Canada. So that's a little bit of what we talked about.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Wow, that's an amazing comprehensive summary, I guess. Well, we really would like to stick to 1 hour. That's why I need to wrap it up here. I would like to thank Nelson for co-facilitating this webinar with this workshop with me. We have had a lot of fun actually preparing it. So we hope that you have you have learned something new today, or this has helped you to kind of rethink a bit also the work you do. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us as well. We will be sharing with Lynn and Nika the presentation and also the guide that we talked to you about earlier. And yeah, stay in touch.